campus that's friendly for other aspects of a student's identity, because there's intersectionality among many of the students. So sometimes, even though, I'm trying to encourage them to look at the campuses that have support programs, other considerations start to outweigh. And then, of course, there's always been concern about the academics. So many students have very strong ideas. Not all students, of course, some have no idea what they want to study, but many have very specific ideas, like it's got to be aerospace engineering or something like that. And if the campus doesn't offer it, doesn't matter how good the support program is, they won't consider it.
Yeah, that is, I think, a constant theme on that Facebook page is the schools that have formalized programs and those that don't.
And one more thing,
Yeah.
and I think I talked about this at the summit last year too, that parents are asking not only about where are the support programs, but which campuses are more welcoming and inclusive in sort of culturally. And that seems to be something that I'm hearing more questions about. Yeah, well, I see what it says on paper, but in real life, is this a place where my kid is going to feel welcome? And that's kind of hard to quantify.
And is that an intersection of identity?
No, I mean, even just in terms of their neurodivergence, is this a college where neurodivergent students really do truly, make friends and feel welcomed? Are quirky kids accepted at this school? And sometimes families will go on a tour and say, it seemed like a lot of athletes. It just didn't seem like the right crowd. I'm worried that my kid won't fit in. And again, it's important, but it's really hard to operationalize or objectify.
Kim, see your hand up.
Well, I know it was actually in the last slide, the hand holding was a comment I made. And just to echo really what Stephen was saying, and also Eric too, but the amount of interaction with parents is increasing, and the amount of help the parents are giving the students. I just found out today that I have a student that's the parent has been writing all the papers, doing all the math problems that are online. And he's a freshman and just started 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh boy, if we talked about plagiarism, he didn't even know what plagiarism meant. I'm like, oh boy. So I'm not quite sure, if he's even ready for college, this particular student. So the needs have increased for sure in students that I'm seeing, in also so many ways, mental health especially.
Yeah,
It's
definitely. Sharon.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing with parents just doing too much. I challenge the parents. I tell them you are also going through a developmental stage, just as your children are. And as parents, your job at this point is to back off and let us do our work. And that can be really hard and anxiety provoking for the parents. But like I wrote an email to a parent today who's looking at every individual assignment for their student. And I said, you can't do that. That's going to make you crazy. And it's not helpful to your student. They can't grow if you're looking at every assignment and they're never allowed to make mistakes. How can they possibly learn? So yeah, I'm seeing the same thing with parents needing as much hand-holding as the students do.
Emmanuel?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that basically the same thing. Here in FSL, we have a lot of parents this semester who are more they are more hands-on than they've been in the past. Like same with all the other colleagues who just spoke. I think the fear is that we have a lot of those parents who also are neurodiverse, who had to go through college with no support, and they don't want the same for their child. So they end up being more hands-on because they know what it's like without support. So what we typically do in FSL is to reassure them that we are here and that's our job. We understand the struggle that a lot of us students go through without support, and that's why we're here. It's to bridge that gap. And we nicely tell them to back off, let us do our job, because we can't do our job if they still want to insert themselves into the support system that we have in place. So we've been assertive and yet nice to tell them, hey, this is our time now. It's our turn. You need to trust us to implement the strategies that we have in place for your child.
It's a really nice example, Emmanuel, of perspective taking, right? To look at these parents and imagine that 20 years ago when they were in college, you all and people like you were not there. And so maybe the quirky kid really got picked on or just wasn't going to succeed. And that's really the perspective that they're bringing to these interactions. Emily?
Yeah, I was kind of going to speak to the last note, just the increase in the mental health challenges. We are specifically this week, in our student concern group that we have with other campus partners, just seeing a lot of self-harm behaviors, and specifically some students in the Connect program are kind of engaging in the self-harm behaviors. So just kind of navigating that with our campus counseling center, and trying to explore, best practices, best ways to support, if students aren't wanting to go to the hospital, but are coming into our office with having just self-harmed. So we've been kind of navigating that this week, and then all the different, ways that it manifests and comes out in different areas on campus.
Mm-hmm. And those actions impact a lot of people in the orbit, right, of the students, the RA, the roommate, classmates.
Definitely.
I put this next slide up with additional comments from folks. Level of need for support is higher than past years, not enough staffing, we have a wait list, no runway to expand. I can't hire staff before taking on new students, can't take on new students without staff. Probably some of you can really relate to that. You see more faculty interest in receiving training and consultation on neurodivergence. That's a really positive thing. More students needing support and institutions wanting staff to do the same quality work without offering more support for staff or hiring more. So doing more with less, or at least with the same. We're off to a positive start with our group, a lot more interaction and folks stepping up as leaders. And then, yeah, mental health challenges that I think a number of you have some experience with. Did I see another hand up? Emmanuel?
Yes. I just wanted to say that I'm glad to see it's not just on my campus. I thought there must be something happening lately. Like since I became director of FSL in 2018, I've been trying to get into those major offices like Title IX, Student Conduct. This semester, we just started at the end of August. I've already spoken to like 4 or 5 offices that we've been trying to reach out to. So I'm glad to hear that it's happening everywhere, that people are more open to allowing us to talk to them and be on the proactive end of things, as opposed to coming in the middle of a crisis that could have been avoided easily with knowing how to handle those cases. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's happening in more than just our campuses.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the benefits of this group. You are not alone. I see in the chat, Stephen said he thinks a robust parent orientation program for summer. This is a great resource for you. A number of folks on this call and elsewhere in the network do that, either a summer program or a first semester weekly gathering. So please do seek out some advice about doing that. Jill?
Just to echo everything, we see all of the very same things that you're all mentioning. And in addition, our student support team, the cross campus meeting we have each week, we are seeing parents who don't have good coping skills. Our counseling center this semester has generated a support group for students with dysfunctional parents. And that is the name of the group. And so
Wow.
in addition to things that everybody has mentioned here, that we are seeing in STEP and proportionately throughout the greater campus at large, we are also seeing not only hovering parents, but parents who don't have good coping skills, parents without strategies. And I don't just mean perhaps the neurodiverse version of parenting, I mean everywhere. Parents who are stretched too thin, who don't have resources, whether it's financial or emotional. There's sort of a lack there also. And that kind of just emerged each week in our Monday morning conference call. We got to the point where we stated, these are dysfunctional parents. And that's not been something we've typically seen throughout. So it's also a concern.
Wow, that's pretty profound. And you're right, they are stretched thin, and the financial risk that they're taking by having a student enrolled in college is tremendous for a lot of them. Suzanne?
Yeah, I wanted to comment about the parents. You know, when we meet the parents and the students at the same time. And, you know, we do an interview. We have like a family information session. We explain the program. We give them a brochure. We give them a whole information fact sheet. We talk to them about how many classes we think the students should take. We tell them why we think that. And then we have an orientation before classes start, and we, you know, reiterate everything we've already said. And then this year, for the first time, all the parents were shocked. Like, why didn't you tell us this? We had no idea that the students were supposed to take, you know, that you thought it would be best for the students to take 12 credits instead of 16. You know, people were like kind of angry. And on the orientation day, they all, you know, went to the Center for Student Success, our advisement office, and all, you know, dropped a class or changed classes. And this has never happened before. It seemed like no one had heard anything, even though, you know, we had explained and talked about things and emailed and given all this information. And we still have parents now who will, this is what, the second or third week of school, who will say, oh, you know, my son told me that he has 2 peer mentors. We're like, yeah, you know, we've been telling you this for months and months and months. And, you know, the parents are kind of talking to us as if they've never heard any information about the program. It's like they've committed to it, they've signed a contract, they paid for it, but at the same time, it seems like they have no idea that this is a program that they've committed to. And another thing, I don't know if, but so this is new for this year. It just seems like kind of strange. But another thing that we're seeing from the parents is there's a lot of entitlement, you know, like they're, if their child is maybe, you know, having a little bit of a difficult time in a class or something like that, they'll say, well, you know, can they get out of this class? Well, yes, and this is the deadline. Well, yeah, but I don't think he understands deadlines. So, you know, can the deadline be extended? Well, no, like this is the deadline. Well, can I have a meeting with the registrar? Can I have a meeting with this person? Can I have a meeting with that person? Can I do this? Can I do that? It's like, you know, we can't, you know, change everything in the college for you. Like, just because we have this support program, it doesn't mean that, you know, we can create this whole thing and change every single rule in the college. And there's still this thing like, well, I need a meeting with every single person who my child meets with, so I can create this, you know, exception. So I don't know if anybody else is seeing that, but it's maybe, it seems like a new thing this year.
Well, they are learning strategies in K-12 that they bring with them. Eric?
Frustrating.
Eric, you're muted. There you go.
Lee, I think you just hit the nail on the head when you mentioned K-12. And what I talk to about with my staff and then the other departments that we interact with is you have to keep in mind that the parents that you're facing have been bruised and battered, and they have been fighting a system that's not neuro-inclusive since pre-K. And they've had to fight for every accommodation. They've had to fight for every scrap that their district will give them. And they've been told all the nice things by the school district, you know, the mission statements, and the teachers are saying the nice things. And so if someone put the comment about trust, no, there is not trust, because they've had to fight for everything. And so what you're seeing is not, it's a built-up pattern of behavior in order to get that. And so I really like the idea of the parent seminar at the start, and because you have to invest in that trust because it's not there, and without investing in it, you're going to see the worst side of it.
Yeah, it's a great point, Eric. And imagine yourself and you're kind of doing the dating scene thing, which for some of you might be like, ugh. And on a first date, you kind of enter into this conversation with the person, and your first assumption is that this person is going to treat you badly and cheat on you. The relationship at that point really is in trouble, right? But I think Eric's right. Like, parents are coming into this feeling like they've had to fight for everything and that they've been misled, or and whether that's true or not, it's hard to say, but we know enough about the struggles that K-12 teachers and others experience to know that they're pressed too to try and meet all of these needs. Adero?
Yeah, I was going to say I used kind of a revision of some of the parent coaching slides instead of guiding us as staff how to get coaching to the parents. I revised it just to talk about the transitions families experience with my advisory council and ask them, you know, what is missing from this discussion and how do we need to get that out to other parents earlier? And I think I got a really good response from them in that they could see that there was a need, and some of them are already in the midst and experiencing some of these transitions. And they're working on ideas now to help me. How do we get that out further? I think we'll do some of that with our conference this in February, and also with the strong supports we have from the community organizations that we work with in this area. The K-12 parent organizations. Yeah.
Right. Building those relationships. Stephen?
About halfway through this conversation I was having with a parent right before I jumped on here, the parent said to me, like, I was explaining that, you know, we got to let your son like take some of these steps himself. Like, the big thing was like, he won't stay on the weekends and we're not forcing him and all this other kind of stuff. I said, well, you know, like, he's got to take some initiative. You know, halfway through this conversation, this person says to me, are you upset with me? Are you upset with this conversation? And I mean, you know, I was talking to her much like I'm talking to you all right now. And I think it goes to Eric's point of that showed me a lot about kind of what the expectation was with regard to how the conversation was going to go. And I kind of had to take it in I did a little therapist trick where I took it in a little bit of a different direction, gave them some self-disclosure about my own kids, and about how, I mean, I have a 23-year-old son who's graduated college. I mean, I get it, it's hard, you gotta let go. And I hear what you're saying and so on and so forth. But it was so telling that this person said to me, are you upset with me? Because I think that she's probably had a lot of conversations with people in positions like mine where the person got upset with her. And I recognize that, and I'm going to use a word here that's, I think, extreme, but we'll all get it. I recognize that trauma a little bit. And had to take the conversation in a different direction. I found that to be very interesting today.
That's a great point, Stephen. And think about it, if you're that parent and what you might think will be the cost to your child if the administrator across the desk is mad at you. Like, is your child going to bear the brunt of someone being upset with that parent? Like that level of mistrust. I asked, you know, what are you most anxious about? And you can see from this slide that people were, it was pretty diverse. Staff work-life balance was the one thing that emerged as a slightly larger concern than some of the others, but this isn't a rigorous study. And then I said, well, what, aside from that first thing that you chose, what's your biggest concern? And that's where student satisfaction and success, which is this red thing, kind of emerged. It's like, oh, yeah, that's always there. That's the steady thrum of anxiety for all of you, right? Like, are my students going to be successful? How do I move them in that direction? And then if I can just, I asked, what have you seen or heard in the past year that's having an impact on your work this year? So what's coming up for you? Like, what are you hearing, thinking about, reading? And we had a number of comments, and I just want to share them with you because I think it's a pretty interesting assortment. But this first one, just because people say they want to participate does not mean they will register and show up for required activities. And I suspect many of you know that. But making staff training, making us aware of how to expand our offerings, still in the throes of sustainability. So like trying to figure out how to keep this this program afloat when there are so many other demands for funding on the campus. Someone says a focus on strength-based approach to neurodiversity, which I'd love to hear more about. If the person who wrote that is on here, let's talk about maybe doing a little webinar or discussion for this group. Lots of good neuro-lit out there. That encouraging and supporting socialization often needs to be ongoing, so it's not one and done. I'll just kind of click through these and then we can talk about any of them. A decrease in student applications, but others are seeing an increase. Professors disregarding accommodations, accommodation letters and providing their own version. But this is positive. Faculty seem to be moving from a place of teach me about this because I'm scared to teach me because I'm curious. And so faculty are eager to learn from many of you. And then back to the more negative side of this, increase in faculty treating students with disabilities differently. For example, not wanting the students in their class if they need accommodations, which is, kind of an interesting challenge, right? And then the last set of comments, we're providing more separation between parents and the clinicians that work directly with students. New students are coming in less well prepared, and returning students who seem to be okay or struggling. But seeing that across the entire student body, and I think probably a lot of your colleagues in student affairs can agree with that. And the importance of speaking directly to parents during the admission process is something that at least one of you sort of said, I figured this out and I'm going to do this better. Any of these comments kind of ring true, or anybody want to elaborate on them? I know I just clicked through a bunch, but I couldn't fit them all on one screen. I can sort of. Yes, and I can definitely share the slides. Kim?
I can definitely say I think I can relate to every single one of them in a recent instance of something too. Not all of them, but because we have had an increase in our applications, but for everything else, I'm like, oh yeah, just 2 weeks ago we had that happen, or like, yeah.
Michaela?
We have faculty. I love the comment that was going from faculty moving from the teach me to they're scared to I'm really curious. And so our faculty have asked us to participate in their faculty senate once a month to help give tips or to help be there for them to ask questions. And then like this last faculty senate, we just even addressed our students were struggling with syllabus that didn't have accurate dates on it, and it really threw our students off. And so even communicating with that to the faculty who think, oh, well, they should figure it out and it's no big deal, just having those conversations and faculty being receptive to hearing it and making those changes, not for just our students, but all neurodiverse students on campus. So
Yeah, I think that your work does make a difference with faculty, and it's amazing to be invited to Faculty Senate. That's a prize. And the last question I asked was, is there a resource, a strategy, a new initiative or program or an aha moment that you can share from which others might benefit? And I think maybe this is, what some of you came for, like, I need more tools for my toolkit. So somebody mentioned creating a new student checklist that's helpful. And again, if the person who wrote that is on here, and you want to share that, we're happy to facilitate that. Furnishings are going to flood 2 campuses. I imagine that's not a literal thing, but making it a tad easier. So someone's getting new equipment, new furnishings. Somebody says art is a great activity in which to engage while accomplishing other goals. So, paint and sip. Speaking of sip, I bet this was Karen Crane's Edison. I know her voice. A nice Chardonnay along with brie apples and fresh bread is.
It's for self-care, right? It's a meal. You're nourishing your soul, you're nourishing your body. Yeah, it's been a tough, it's been a rough 5 weeks for us. But again, I think the nice part about it is that coming together, the voices that we hear are pretty phenomenal. So again, it's nice to know that everybody is lifting each other up to come up with new and better ways of doing what we do. Thanks. And I'll buy in Columbus.
I was going to say, is that going to be one of the sessions in Columbus, the Chardonnay apples board?
Right.
Let's go.
It depends on how many we have now. I actually the weekend after, so I'll be doing it before and now.
Karen, you have at least one other person interested in that. So
okay, there we go.
There's a reason that we don't program a lot of stuff in the evening. Someone else mentioned instituting faculty drop-in hours for faculty to consult with me about students in my program, which is kind of an interesting idea. And this person did a training on polyvagal theory in the classroom, which was well received. Also a great topic for conversation in this group, if somebody would like to tell us about polyvagal theory in the classroom. Any other resources, anything that is kind of relevant to what you've got there? Sharon, I see your hand up.
Yeah, the polyvagal theory, that was me. So polyvagal theory addresses how the vagus system affects our ability to regulate our nervous system and engage in social interaction. And there's some reason to believe that autistic people have more reactive vagus system, more likely to be tripped into a trauma state where it's harder to learn, harder to engage in social interaction. And the same is true for students who have trauma. So of course, we all know that we have a lot more students who've experienced trauma than in past years. So educating the faculty on how being in a dysregulated neural state makes it impossible for the students to learn. And so I taught strategies for the faculty to regulate themselves, because I told them, as the person standing in front of the room, you have the most influence on how regulated people feel in the room, that your job is to share your calm, not join their chaos. And then I taught them strategies that they can do very quickly with their class to get everybody quickly re-regulated when things start to go off the rails. So it was very well received.
Share their calm, not join their chaos. That's a mantra. That's great. Thank you, Sharon.
Can't find my
oh, Carrie.
little thing. I just
okay.
How do you get faculty to show up? I mean, I know that the ones who are already on board and already get it are sometimes the ones who show up. How do you get? I mean, do you make it mandatory? Do you have to? I mean, I bake brownies. That usually gets some people in, but how do you get faculty to show up?
Our faculty have a workshop 3 times a year, and I'm always invited to participate. And so there are other workshops they could choose, but I try to create like interesting titles like polyvagal theory in the classroom, or one time I did spoon theory in the classroom. And so it's intriguing to them, and they'll come just to find out what the heck is spoon theory, or what is polyvagal theory. So that's how we get them to show up.
Okay. Do they
And then-
have to, do they have to go to a certain minimum of workshops a year?
It is expected for full-time faculty. The part-time people are encouraged, but they don't have the same requirements. Yeah.
Okay,
And when I do an intervention with a student and a particular faculty member, they talk about it, and we're a small campus. So word gets around that I'm helpful, and so then people want to come and find out what that's about.
okay,
Great, great.
thank you.
Stephen?
Just to piggyback a little bit on what Sharon was saying, to find the mandatory events that faculty have to go to. So we have staff admin faculty meetings, I think 4 or 5 times a year. And I've talked to our president about utilizing some of that time, because again, we can't make these things mandatory for faculty, and the people that don't need to be there are the ones that always show up because they're interested in that stuff. One of the things I'm really trying to leverage this year, and again, this might be a unique situation for me. I was a faculty member at Chestnut Hill for the last 5 years. So I'm trying to kind of wrangle some of my closest faculty friends to kind of infiltrate the faculty and say, like, let's get them to some of these sessions that we're trying to do. If you have that group, that core group of faculty that show up to all these things all the time, maybe leverage their kind of cred, if you will, to try to get people to come to these things. But again, my main suggestion is a lot of what Sharon said. Find out what the mandatory faculty things are and get on those agendas, because we can't make these things mandatory, which I'm just going to say I think is ridiculous. It's part of our job. And I said that when I was a faculty member. I'm like, we all got to show up to these things because it's part of what we do. So I'm definitely trying to use some of my faculty friends to get them to these sessions throughout the next course of the year.
That's great to hear. Emmanuel?
I just wanted to quickly add to what you just said, amazing strategies. What we started doing lately is to pull a report of all of our students and their current professors every semester. And we send an email that says, you have one of our students in your classroom. Come talk to us. We're not going to tell you who it is because of confidentiality purpose, but if you come talk to us, we can give you some strategies that not only will serve that student, but your entire class. And we've seen a surge of people coming and talking to us. So again, we make sure that we don't disclose, but that has gotten us a lot of buy-ins from the faculty.
That's great to hear. Kim?
So this past spring, I did something that's worked out to be very successful. What I did, because I wanted to speak with all the faculty and, let them, give them a brief, background of what we're doing with STARS and give them some tips and as much as I can do in a short period of time, because I know everyone's so busy. And the idea I had was to email each dean of each school. There's only 4 schools at our school. So it was just an email to 4 deans. And I told them, they all know who I am, but I told them I would love to have an opportunity, me and another colleague of mine who's a professor, to speak at one of their upcoming school meetings, which they have once a month, and those are required. And every department has responded. We've already done 2. I say school, I mean school. Every school's responded. We did 2 in the spring, and we're going to do 2 in the fall. And even though it's a short period of time, it's not anything super lengthy, I've had so many people ask, hey, we really want to learn more. So it's been a great way to reach every faculty member. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent idea. And I'm looking in the chat, and Jill mentions she is also exploiting those relationships garnered over 20 years, right? Like you can't rush that. It's for those of you who've been at this work on your campuses for years, those relationships are super important. But if you're fairly new to your role, you're gonna have to be patient and really do the outreach. Christy wondered in the chat, can anyone recommend short interactive activities within neurodiversity presentations for educating undergraduate students about neurodiversity. So the peers of some of the students in your programs. Has anybody found a good brief activity that works well? Or are you doing these trainings? Are you working with other the neurotypical students?
We found that the best way is for students in, it's actually in the Center for Access, who have disabilities, were part, obviously, who are part of our student group. Leadership, Education, and Awareness of Disabilities go around to classes and speak about their experiences as students with disabilities. They're not all, well, we all, most are I would identify as neurodivergent, but not all. But still, that them explaining it peer to peer has been extremely effective, and they've gone mostly to education classes, nursing classes, social work classes. It's been very effective. The students have really liked it.
Great. So an ambassador program. No.
So,
Oh, go ahead, Daryl.
yeah, we have a peer mentor program, and it's made up of students from anywhere in the university. So they go through some mentorship training that kind of gives them some better ways to work with our students. And it's really better ways to work with a broad range of students, but that seems to be helpful too.
Mm-hmm. Right, you know, and incorporating some of this into RA training, into orientation leader training, you know, any opportunity you have where, you know, the admissions tour guides, can you get on their training schedule? I know that's sometimes tough because having been on that end of everybody asking me if they can have just half an hour with the RAs, and the RAs are, you know, after 2 days of listening to talking heads, aren't listening anymore. But, you know, maybe a month into the semester when things are not quite as intense, just being able to come in for 20 minutes, half an hour, introduce some concepts, some terms, bring a student who's part of that presentation. The last slide I have here is a couple of other suggestions that people had. Somebody mentioned the College Dorms and Social Norms book. I'm not familiar with that. Is anybody on the screen? Imagine it's a Googleable thing, but someone finds it really helpful. And then someone else mentioned resource tours, small group walkabouts designed to further acclimate new students to offices or programs on campus. And so kind of extending orientation activities into the semester when anxiety perhaps is slightly lower and their capacity to absorb information might be greater. You know, and I think it's what we see with parents. You all mentioned earlier that you say all of this stuff to parents and then they're like, you never told me this. I've been telling you this. But we know, right, neuroscience tells us that anxiety impedes receptivity, right? And sending your kid to college is an anxiety producing activity. So any other thoughts before we wrap up? Any other great resources or ideas? Oh, thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn put a title in there. That anybody would like to share? Something you're really excited, like, wow, that worked. All right, well, I'm going to come back and ask you that in a month or so. So when things work, please share them. If you heard something from somebody on this call that you think sounds really interesting, I encourage you to follow up with them individually. I'm happy to facilitate that if you need an email and you can't find it, or use the listserv to get more information. But you know, being able to really tap the expertise on this screen is, I think, really valuable. part of your membership, your College Autism Network. So it's just about 5 o'clock Eastern time. I will see many of you at the summit, and those of you who can't make it to the summit this year, don't worry, we'll do it again. Stephen has an announcement, graduate students looking to speak with program directors. Oh, Stephen, you should put that on the listserv. I'm sure there'll be people who'd be willing to talk to your grad students. So
Yeah, I
please
just
use
wanted
it
to
for
kind
that.
of throw that out there to the group real quick at the end, and we can talk about it in Columbus if we need to. I have 2 grad students on one of their committees, and the other I'm not, but I'm just helping recruit. One is looking to talk to program directors for their study. The other is looking to recruit students about masking their diagnosis in higher education. Anybody who's interested in assisting, helping with that research, I dropped my email in the chat. Please reach out to me and let me know. We would appreciate your help and assistance with regard to these 2 studies. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so folks, hope we'll see some of you in Columbus, and others of you I'll see after the summit, because I'll schedule another call like this and we can keep talking. Stay safe, stay sane, enjoy these last few weeks of nice weather if you indeed have that like I do, and we will see you all soon. Take care, everybody.